Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold, fresh off the All-Star break, a series in Toronto, a lot of driving, and doing his podcast partner a big favor getting things done. How you doing, my man? And thanks for the short notice getting stuff done. I got a busy day tomorrow.
No, man. How many times have you picked me up, man? I got you. No worries at all. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it's obviously one of those things where like the All-Star break, how much does it really feel like an All-Star break as a beat writer? Not a whole lot, because you got to cover the draft, which was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That was, 3 days worth of coverage. And then obviously there's a home run derby on Monday. So you're kind of always keeping an eye on stuff that's going on around the league, but nothing there pressing about the Tigers. And then obviously the All-Star game on Tuesday, the American League won 5-3. Tarik Skubal pitched in the second inning. Riley Greene played in the later innings. So wrote about that as well, which was interesting. And then, yeah, I got some time to take on Wednesday and Thursday, which was nice to kind of, push the reset button. But then, yeah, Friday morning, like it was back on the road, getting to Toronto for a 3-game series where the Tigers have proven they're here to like play. Like that it's kind of interesting, right? Because this is a team that you go back and you look at the way that things were on the 4th of July. I mean, that was the 12-3 loss to the Minnesota Twins in Minneapolis when Kenta Maeda got absolutely rocked on the 4th of July. There were fireworks everywhere and they were all coming from the Twins. Things were not looking great. And the Tigers responded by sweeping the Cincinnati Reds, taking 3 of 4 against the Cleveland Guardians, taking 2 of 3 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then now coming out of the All-Star break, taking 2 of 3 against the Toronto Blue Jays. And they were in a position where they really could have swept the series in Toronto. Like Sunday's game, they lost 5-4, but it was a game where, Carson Kelly was robbed of, an extra base hit that would have drove in the game tying run. And if that would have happened, like, who knows? Wencio Perez, even at the very end, right? Or Gio Urshela had a deep fly out. Like there were so many opportunities for the Tigers to sweep that series. It almost felt like they were going to throughout Sunday's game. The fact that they won 2 of 3, I think coming out of the break, that tells me a lot about this team. It reminds me that they're a resilient group. They're going to continue to fight. And look, they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. We're going to get into that, I know. But, this team, something's going on here, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. I only hope it continues.
The nicest thing we can say about the Detroit Tigers right now, especially since the 4th of July, they compete every day. And they're finding a way. They're finding guys who may not be doing a lot, but at the right time, they're doing a lot. Jake Rogers yesterday, perfect example of that. Last person on the list you thought was going to do something great, and he did something great. Getting contributions from Jahen, who's been really good the last, 25 days. I mean, really good. Far beyond my expectations, I can tell you that. And tip of the hat, much more mature approach, has learned a few things, has been able to implement the things he's learned to improve his game. And I always like to see that from any player. You're always going to get respect from me, no matter what I think your long-term benefits are as a player. If you can learn things and apply them, that's everything as a big league ball player, because it's no harder place to do those things than in the major leagues. So, really impressive last few weeks from the Tigers. And as I say, and you say many times, it's never who you're playing, it's how you're playing. And they're playing well. They're overcoming mistakes, and they're getting big hits when you least expect them. And that's always a prescription to be in or win baseball games. So they've won 4 series in a row. I don't think there's any other time we can say that this year. And there's a lot of fun things to discuss. So let's get right into it. Question 1 of the big 2. Starting rotation is down to 3 starting pitchers. Plus Kerry Carpenter and Parker Meadows are on the injured list. Can the lineup and the rotation continue to perform? Because it's really getting down to, the last real quality major league human beings they have. I mean, we're seeing some players that we never thought we would see. Talk to me about what you think that the next 2 weeks are going to be like. Obviously, you got some players maybe that'll heal up, but let's talk about where we're at and what they're going to do about it.
Yeah, from the position playing standpoint, you obviously mentioned, Parker Meadows being down, Kerry Carpenter, being on the injured list as well. It seems like Parker Meadows is going to be the first of those two guys to come back. Kerry Carpenter, I mean, they're going to take their time with him. He already had the one setback coming back from a lumbar spine stress fracture. Parker Meadows has the hamstring strain. He's already initiated running drills and things like that. So he's making his way back. I wouldn't be surprised if he's, getting ready to start a rehab assignment, pretty quickly here towards the end of July. Kerry Carpenter, I don't think he's too far behind, but when it does come to the rehab portion of things and the rehab assignment, I do think that once that gets going for both of those guys, it'll be a little bit quicker for Parker Meadows. The Tigers are going to have to be really careful with Kerry Carpenter. Like, that's not a guy that you want to push at this point, because if he has another setback, you're looking at not getting him back for the rest of the season. Right now, it seems like he, probably is on track to return at some point in August, probably more like mid-late August. But again, another setback and, you're pushing September. And at that point, season's getting close to over. Parker Meadows, he's a dynamic player who can be a huge difference maker. So he's going to be, a really key piece to get back when they do get him back. I think that could be as soon as early August. And that would be great just to kind of have that production back in the lineup. And then as far as everything else goes, like, we talked about it, Mark, it really comes down to what are you getting from Riley Greene? What are you getting from Cole Keith? Like, I do think that, like, having pieces around them, that's always important, right? Like, you have to have a deep lineup. That's some of the Tigers, they haven't had a deep enough lineup. And I really don't think their lineup is actually that deep when you look up and down at the players they're rolling out there every day. It's good to see the production from Justin Henry Malloy. Hat tip to him, because, I mean, man, he was swinging and missing at a lot of pitches, and he still does. And that's going to be a flaw in his game probably for his entire career, because it was something that he struggled with in AAA. Like, when you struggle with swing and miss in AAA, it's not like you come to the big leagues and suddenly, like, it gets better, right? But it was really bad. It was really bad early on. And he's done a good job of mitigating some of that, while making some good swing decisions, as he always does, swinging at strikes. And, he's putting the ball in play a little bit more. And when he makes contact, it goes a long way. We saw that on Sunday when he hit the first grand slam of his career in just his 35th game here as a rookie. Wencio Perez, like, there's been ups and downs. And there are times where he kind of, doesn't look super competitive at the plate. But then there are other times where he just has this, like, hitterish vibe in the batter's box. And that's the kind of guy that you like in the lineup. And he's someone that you want to continue to see what they're going to be able to do long term. I don't know if his ceiling is any more than like a utility player when all is said and done. Like, I don't know if he's really an everyday type of guy, but I think he could be a really valuable, switch hit bat coming off the bench in a utility role long term. But for now, like, he's in there every day, and he's been able to find ways to contribute more often than not. Those are really exciting things to see, because those are two young players. But again, it really does come down to Riley Greene and Cole Keith. Like, if these guys are really clicking on all cylinders, I think anything can happen with this offense. Like, if you have two juggernauts in the middle of that lineup with some additional help from other players, I mean, yeah, like, anything can happen. Really, anything can happen. And when you talk about what the lineup has been able to do recently, WRC plus going back to July 5th. So after that July 4th, really bad game the Tigers had when things were at their low point, their WRC plus is 137. They're 37% above league average on offense. That ranks second in baseball to only the Oakland Athletics, who are 55% above league average since July 5th. So are the Tigers going to be a 137 WRC plus offense for the rest of the year? No way, which is why I think they're going to regress, and which is why I think that some of what we're seeing is kind of like a hot stretch that teams are going to go through. I don't think it's going to continue. And then on top of that, you do have the rotation issues. And you have the fact that, like, look, this is a team that's down to Tarik Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Cater Montero in their starting rotation. Jack Flaherty is going to be traded at the July 30th deadline. So you're looking at Skubal, Montero, and Kenta Maeda returning from the bullpen to the starting rotation. You're looking at those as your three guys. Casey Mize, he's not coming back anytime soon. They're being very cautious with him, just as a precautionary reason. Plus, again, this is a guy who hasn't pitched in a long time, so there's going to be some innings restrictions. This kind of gives them some time to make sure that the arm stays healthy while he rehabs from a hamstring strain. So, you're looking at having like 3 starters in the rotation post July 30th. Now, that's something they can worry about in 2 weeks from now. But in the meantime, yeah, you got Skubal, Flaherty, Montero, Kenta Maeda coming back. But after that, there's not a whole lot of rotation depth that the Tigers have. So I don't foresee them being able to keep this up. It's a lot of fun right now. I'm enjoying it. They're enjoying it. I know the fans are enjoying it. Mark, I know you're enjoying it as well. Everybody likes it when, the team wins. Like it's fun. It's more enjoyable to cover it. Don't get me wrong. But I don't see this continuing.
You know what I love about doing Days of Roar with Evan Petzold is that he can compartmentalize so much information in 5 minutes that you're asking a 68-year-old man to remember all the things that you just covered in 5 minutes. Let's see what I can do. First of all, let's do a little housekeeping for Days of Roar podcast listeners, because I saw a lot of questions about this today, and I just want to quickly have both of us or you explain the retroactive placing of Kerry Bonds Carpenter, the memory of Kerry Bonds Carpenter on the 60-day disabled list. Explain how you do it retroactively so people don't think he has to wait 60 days to get activated.
Yeah, no. He's been on the injured list since May 29th. So that's like 50 plus days already. So that basically just means that he can get called up within like the next week or so. And that's not happening anyway. So that's what it means, like retroactively moving from the 15-day injured list to the 60-day injured list. It does not mean that he's going to have to wait another 2 months. If that were the case, like we're running out of season at that point. He's planning to come back. Like that was something that I made it a point before the All-Star break. I went to talk to Kerry Carpenter and I was kind of asking him about timelines, and, he wasn't really sure because he hadn't fully resumed baseball activities yet. He was just doing some light hitting at that point. And so he wasn't sure on a timeline, but I said, hey, like, you're going to come back before the end of the season, right? And he said, like, he doesn't see a world in which he does not come back. So he is fully expecting to come back before the end of the season. Him moving to the 60-day injured list, that's just like, again, that's like a formality, because they need to open up a spot on the 40-man roster because they called up Bly Madris, the left-handed hitting first baseman, take the spot of Ryan Valade. Ryan Valade stays on the 40-man roster, but they needed to open a spot for Bly Madris. And so basically to do that, the easiest way to make that happen was to, move Kerry Carpenter to the 60-day. It gets you an extra spot on the 40. But yeah, the 60-day placement means absolutely nothing.
It's procedural. And when you go on the 60, you create an open spot on the 40-man. So for those of you that don't understand that, hopefully we've cleared it up a little bit. You can activate Kerry Bonds Carpenter as soon as day 60 from when he initially was placed. This 15-day IL, as soon as those 60-day period transpires from that day, which is pretty much almost any day.
Yeah, I mean, it's just July 28th, but that's not happening, obviously.
Right.
But
I'm saying, but you could activate him on July 20th.
Exactly.
So, hey, as far as my opinion about it is, Kerry Bonds Carpenter will be coming back with this particular back injury. As somebody that's a veteran of back injuries, I'm going to give it a 50-50 shot. I don't think much more than that. I think when he starts taking 50 to 100 swings a day against a machine, then live pitching, then goes on a rehab assignment, it can do it without pain. Still going to have to convince me, and wouldn't shock me if he did not play again, because as soon as he feels pretty much anything, they're shutting him down and going, maybe it's a good idea if we give him 8 months until he has to swing again. And that's pretty much my feeling about that. So would be nice to have him back. Don't really expect him back. As far as starting rotation, I think we're going to talk a little bit about what we think might happen as part of the Big Two and the rest of this podcast. But yeah, Keter Montero, Jack Flaherty, Tarik Skubal. Hopefully Casey Mize is going to go out on a rehab assignment in the next 10 days. Hopefully, because it's been a while. It must have been a pretty severe hamstring strain. But I would expect they'll ramp him up and get him going here pretty soon. Would also expect with the trade deadline, deals that are made, people are going to get DFA'd. They may find something interesting or useful to bridge them as a starting pitcher. The idea of Kenta Maeda starting again. Yeah, it was a nice 3 2/3 inning stint versus the Dodgers. If you watched him the other day, he looked like he has in the other 15 outings he's had this year. And I don't really think AJ Hinch is real eager to insert Kenta Maeda back into the starting rotation. It's almost like conceding a baseball game. And I don't think AJ Hinch is real interested in conceding many baseball games. So they're going to have to put something together. They really don't have anything left in the minor leagues. Now the man Manning has been injured. They're going to have to get creative. And Scott Harris is pretty good at dumpster diving, estate sale type of things. I would expect they will add somebody within the next 10 days to at least start a few games. Like they can keep doing bullpen games every time through the rotation. Or let's maybe think that Joey Wentz could get a start. Tend to doubt Bo Brisky does. Too valuable, being hit and miss in leverage. But Joey Wentz maybe could get a start. I wouldn't be shocked by that idea. It's almost as bad as Kenta Maeda starting, but wouldn't be shocked. So, got any thoughts on that one? Joey Wentz?
Yeah, I think we got a lot of podcasts to discuss.
Evan Petzold, that is so strong. All right. Let's try to get to question 2 of the big 2. Does the recent run, winning 12 of 17 since June 30th, alter the plans at the July 30th trade deadline? And should it? Let's look at who's on the trade block. Is anybody coming off the trade block? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like, again, as much as I hate to be a Debbie Downer, I don't think, again, 12 of 17 since June 30th, the 4-game winning streak until, Sunday's loss, how good they played, how well they played since July 5th. Like, it's been fun, but at the same time, I don't think it changes anything about the plans at the trade deadline. And I think the reason that you come to that conclusion is because, well, you just take a peek at the standings, and the Tigers, for as much winning as they have done recently, they're 11 games back in the American League Central. They're 6 games back for the final wild card spot. Cleveland Guardians, I mean, again, look up and down their division and the teams that they're playing. I mean, it's Cleveland Guardians at 59 and 39, Minnesota Twins at 54 and 44, Kansas City Royals at 55 and 45, and then there are the Tigers at 49 and 51. Tigers trying to claw their way back to a 500 record. They got pretty close, but again, lost on Sunday. That was their opportunity to get back to an even 500. But then you take a look at the wild card, and right now in the wild card, got the New York Yankees, Minnesota Twins, Kansas City Royals. Some of the teams that are still fighting for that last wild card spot: Boston Red Sox, Seattle Mariners, Tampa Bay Rays. Tigers are in there. Texas Rangers are in there. Toronto Blue Jays. I don't really want to say that they're in that fight anymore, but I mean, they are kind of like still around. They're not bottom feeders yet, but they're sure on their way. And yeah, again, I think the Tigers have a better team than the Yankees and the Twins and the Royals and the Red Sox and the Mariners and the Rays. I don't know, maybe the Rays, maybe. But again, look up and down the Tigers lineup. I'm not really sure that what they're doing right now is sustainable. So I don't think that changes anything. And I think when you look at who's on the trade block, it's the guys that are on expiring contracts. Jack Flaherty, for sure, he's going to get moved. That's the plan. Carson Kelly, a catcher, he's had a career-changing type year, coming off a bunch of injuries, was cut by the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Tigers targeted him last season towards the end of the year, brought him in. Carson Kelly replaced Eric Haas, finished the season with the Tigers. The Tigers picked up a team option that they slapped onto the contract and basically went through the entire offseason. And they had Carson Kelly make some big changes, trying to get to some bat speed, making sure that he was able to keep his body healthy and, change some things about the way that he holds the bat and the way that he stands in the batter's box to allow him to get his hands to the ball a little bit quicker, which also gave him more time to make decisions, whether to swing or not to swing. And so when you combine the bat speed with the change in some of the mechanical, adjustments that he's made, Carson Kelly has had a pretty good season. They're catching for the Tigers, and they had Dylan Dingler waiting in the wings, ready to be called up. He's on the 40-man roster already. He's in AAA Toledo. It makes all the sense in the world to trade both Jack Flaherty and Carson Kelly. I think those are the two players who are on expiring contracts, who probably have the most value at this point. Jack Flaherty, look, we know he's got the back injury. The big question is, how long is his back going to be able to hold up? He's had 2 injections this season. He also had 1 injection last season, but he came back coming out the break, and I thought he looked solid, rock solid against the Toronto Blue Jays before Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just hit an absolute missile of a home run. Still, Jack Flaherty, it was 5 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs, both earned runs on that home run from Vlad Jr. 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. He threw 98 pitches. Like, it was vintage Jack Flaherty, what we've seen all year from him. I thought that was really encouraging. The next step for him is going to be to go out there and do it again. It's been a long time since he's made like back-to-back starts on regular rest. He hasn't done that since the end of, really since the end of June, when he pitched on June 21st and then June 27th. And since then, there's been layoffs in between each of his starts, one of those being by design, the other one being because of the All-Star break. So I'll be very interested to see how he does next time out. But those are the 2 guys to really look at. And then, can they really get anything from Mark Canha? I don't think so. Gio Urshela, I don't think so. Maybe you package those guys. Maybe it's a smaller deal that, you try to find somebody at the lower levels of the minor leagues who maybe has one attribute that the Tigers really, really like. And then they can try to build around that attribute with that player through the player development, system. Maybe that's the way they approach trying to trade Mark Canha or Gio Urshela, both on expiring contracts. But those guys haven't done enough for long enough, I think, to really be like coveted pieces at this point by other teams. Now, yeah, Mark Canha gets on base. Gio Urshela can play a good third base for you. They do some things. But again, they're not in the same category as Jack Flaherty and Carson Kelly when it comes to trade value.
I think Flaherty will bring them something very useful. I think, Carson Kelly, probably a tier 3 type of deal. He will be looked at. People like catchers. Carson Kelly, believe it or not, is in the top 10 in catcher war in baseball this year. So much better year than you think. Mark Canha, absolutely someone's going to be interested in Mark Canha. And as I've said many times, any hard-throwing reliever in A or Double-A that you can pry away in exchange for Mark Canha, I'm all over that idea. Gio Urshela, I'll take a wild card arm from anybody. I also think any reliever on the staff, Chafin, Holton, Foley, and I know everybody hates the idea of trading those guys, but depends on what's being offered. Relievers are always at a premium at the deadline, and I'm listening. I'm not listening hard, but I am listening. And I think you're leaving one guy out who any contender can figure out a way how to optimize, especially in important spots, especially late in the game to pinch hit, and that's Andy Ibanez. Andy Ibanez has value to any contender to come up, make one swing at an important time in a game, or to play against a left-hander in a big game. So don't be shocked.
Andy Ibanez makes a ton of sense. That's a really smart name to bring up, because when you look at what he does against left-handed pitching, right, he's hitting .388 with a 1.046 OPS against left-handed pitchers, and the Tigers have a second baseman named Colt Keith, and they want Colt Keith to get a ton of opportunities against left-handed pitching because they want Colt Keith to develop into a Riley Greene type of everyday player, a start him and just forget it type player who's going to be in there every single day. And Colt Keith hasn't gotten those opportunities because the Tigers have value in Andy Ibanez, right? There have been late game situations where Colt Keith is at the plate, ready to hit against a lefty, and he, again, they pull him back and they send Andy Ibanez out there to pinch hit because, again, it makes sense based on the numbers. You're trying to win the game, it makes sense. But if you're trying to develop Colt Keith to be an everyday player hitting against righties and lefties, and not only just, being able to hold his own, but being a feared hitter against both righties and lefties, you have to give him opportunities against lefties, both as against lefty starters and also lefty relievers in really big moments. And so that's why, and the Tigers want that for Colt Keith. They want Colt Keith to be that guy. They don't want to pinch hit, for Colt Keith against a left-handed pitch. That's not in the playbook for them long term. The plan is for Colt Keith to play all game, every game, as many games as his body is going to allow him to play, and face as many pitchers as he can, and just kind of let him run wild and play as much as he wants. That's the plan. So if that's the plan, then yes, moving on from Andy Ibanez makes a whole lot of sense, especially when you consider what the Tigers have in Colt Keith and what they're trying to build long-term with him as a centerpiece, a foundational piece of this offense. So yeah, I think Andy Ibanez makes a ton of sense. Like that's a name that you have to watch for. And yeah, there's value all over the place there with him. But again, he's a guy who cannot hit right-handed pitching whatsoever. He's shown us that this year. So if a team's going to get him, they're going to have a real need for hitters against lefties. But there are contenders out there who are going to need some help against lefty pitchers. Andy Ibanez could be a big answer.
Yep. I mean, it's just a fact of life. And by the way, Scott Harris, need to make deals. The idea that anybody is going to be held back from being traded, besides Tarik Skubal, is just a fallacy. You need to improve the team for 2025. In case you missed it, take a look at the lineup they put out there today. There were quite a few non-major league players in that lineup. Yeah, competed their butt off, but not a real talented lineup out there. Yep, injuries have depleted some places, but injuries have also not depleted some places, and you need to improve. So anything you can do to improve your roster, I would suggest Scott Harris aggressively pursue any idea. Doesn't have to hit on all of them. Would be nice if he just hit on one or two. All right, let's finish this topic up. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I think we can put the Tarik Skubal being traded rumors to rest. Is that fair or not?
Well, just to kind of like recap how we got here, Tom Verducci, from Sports Illustrated, he reported that the Baltimore Orioles and the Los Angeles Dodgers were interested in putting together packages for Tarik Skubal. Bob Nightingale from USA Today has since reported that the Tigers are seemingly apparently engaged in talks with the Orioles and Dodgers on packages for Tarik Skubal. So, I mean, again, who knows how real all that kind of stuff is? I'm sure that there are 29 teams interested in building a package to go get Tarik Skubal because Tarik Skubal is a really good pitcher. How invested the Orioles and the Dodgers really are, I mean, who really knows at this point? Again, I think that those are two teams that would love to have Tarik Skubal on their roster. No doubt about it. 29 teams and 30 teams, including the Tigers, right, really want Tarik Skubal on their roster. The Tigers are just the ones lucky enough to have him right now. So yeah, look, if a Tarik Skubal trade is going to happen, whether it's at the trade deadline, whether it's in the offseason, it's going to have to be an offer that really blows the Tigers away. They got 2 more years of team control after this season. I've said it over and over again. If you're not planning on winning within the next 2 years, what are you doing holding on to him? Because if you have no plans to win in the next 2 years, let's not wait until the trade deadline before his contract expires and to make that move. Again, he's just not going to be as valuable at that point. You're not going to get as much back for him. But either way, I don't see a trade happening at the trade deadline. I don't view that as a likely outcome for Tarik Skubal. Now, I do think that a trade in the offseason could be a little bit more likely. That's when we see more, big leaguer for big leaguer type trades. Because again, we talk about the Baltimore Orioles, right? They obviously have the pieces to pull off a trade for Tarik Skubal, but do they want to part ways with a Jordan Westburg and a Jackson Holliday and a Kobe Mayo to try to make that happen right now? Probably not, because they might need those 3 guys. They might be better off going out and getting somebody like a Jack Flaherty who at times, actually more often than not, has pitched like a number 1 or a number 2 this season. So yes, Jack Flaherty is not Tarik Skubal, but at the same time, you also don't have to give up a Westburg, Holliday, and Mayo to get Jack Flaherty. You'd have to give up a lesser prospect to get Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty is a rental. It's a huge difference than trying to go after an AL Cy Young leader like Tarik Skubal, who has multiple years of team control. So that's a hard trade to pull off for teams at this time of year. I think it's more likely to happen in the offseason. I think Tarik Skubal stays as a Tiger throughout the July 30th trade deadline. I think he's with us in August and September, but I'm not so sure he's with us when the Tigers report to spring trading in February. But for that, we're going to have to wait and see. And I'll have to do a little bit more digging on that once we get into the offseason.
I would say there are 2 things that I like to dream about getting done that have about as much chance as a Tarik Skubal trade happening. One is winning a $230 million plus lottery. 2 is Kate Hudson going to the Caribbean with me. I would say that both those two things have an equal likelihood of happening as Tarik Skubal being dealt. There's only two teams that are really have the cargo to affect the trade for Tarik Skubal. One has no interest, which is Boston. The other one has never really dealt their best prospects. That's Baltimore. And I just want to remind everybody two things. One, the biggest trade the Tigers have made in the last 23 months was acquiring Matt Vierling. And two, if we're not going to compete for the next 2 years, and that's what the head of baseball operations is telling Chris Ilitch, there's a huge problem, because you're basically telling them that you're not going to compete till year 5 of the Harris regime, and I don't think that's really what was discussed when they hired the man. All right, let's move on. Time to take a break. We'll be back in 60. All right, we're back. Got a topic I think everyone's been waiting for us to start discussing. It's fun. I think they'll be surprised by yours and my takes about it. But if you pay any attention to anything, especially Tiger minor league report, anything about the Tigers minor league prospects, and understand where your current starting pitching staff is, question starts becoming, top prospect Jackson Jobe has just been dominating every time out almost this season. He started last night through 6 no-hit innings, which ended up being a 9-inning combined no-hitter for Double-A Erie. Once again, dominating, has added all kinds of things to his arsenal as the year has gone on, which we're happy to discuss if you would like to. Will we see Jackson Jobe throw a pitch for the Tigers in 2024? Evan Petzold, I know what my answer is about this. I tweeted it, so I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, my answer is no, but I really want to hear what you think about this first.
I think he's starting Thursday. I don't think they have a choice. I don't think he has anything left to learn in Double-A. If you want to talk a little bit about what defines somebody being ready and what defines somebody dominating people with stuff, let's talk about it at least quickly. So Jackson Jobe is more than ready. He's got more than enough command to survive not only well, but probably thrive in the major leagues. By far the most impressive pitching prospect not named Paul Skeens this year. He's learned to command both sides of the plate, all 4 quadrants of the strike zone, has 3+ pitches. And to be really blunt about it, anything that's not pitching in the major leagues starting this Thursday is basically service time manipulation. And I get it, but the bottom line is you got a baseball team that's winning, and to pitch Kenta Maeda in bullpen games instead of throwing Jackson Jobe is heresy. It's just nonsense. It's just ridiculousness. We're going to worry about an extra season 6 years from now when you have a guy that's ready to get major league hitters out. It's going to bring people into your stadium, and most importantly, going to help you win. It is part of the core almost as a guarantee in 2025. What are we really doing here? Are we trying to have a baseball team, or are we running an accounting office? You tell me.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I don't think Jackson Jobe pitches for the Detroit Tigers until probably the start of next season, 2025. I think he's on the opening day roster as long as all goes well and he's able to stay healthy up until that point. But this is a guy who has made 11 starts this season, 8 of them for Double-A Erie, 3 of them for High A West Michigan. He suffered a back injury last season. He suffered a hamstring injury this season. So he's had injuries in back-to-back seasons. He's only pitched 41 innings. Last year, he pitched 64 innings, and then he went and pitched an additional 15 innings in the Arizona Fall League. So in terms of a volume standpoint being built up, he's not where the Tigers would have liked him to be at this point. Now, obviously, injuries have hindered that. But again, like the 100-inning mark was kind of a number that was thrown out there as the kind of target for Jackson Jobe. So right now, he's at 41. Do the math on that. Like he's got roughly 60 innings left, maybe A little bit less. So yeah, like, could they get something out of him at the big league level? No doubt about it. Like 100%. Is the stuff good enough to face big league hitters? You better believe it. But are the Tigers ready to put him in that situation? Are they ready to start the clock? Are they ready? By when I say clock, I mean big league service time clock. And are they ready to make that commitment to rolling him out there, knowing that this guy is going to go 100% all out and he's going to let it eat? I don't think that's a bad thing, but I also think that like there is an element of, is he ready? Is he mature, and is he ready for that? Like, is the stuff is good enough? Yes. But Jackson Jobe as a pitcher, is he ready for the big leagues? Again, you'd have to be inside the mind of Jackson Jobe to really know one way or the other. I know he wants to be up in 2024. He wants to pitch for the Tigers this season. 100%. He's come out and said it. He's been very vocal about that. Is it going to happen? I'm just not so sure. People that I've talked to, I had, again, even before the hamstring injury, he was, again, I think it was like 5 outings at the Double-A level before the hamstring injury. And, somebody had mentioned that he needed to pitch in Triple-A before he got an opportunity to pitch with the Tigers, and that was part of the development plan for him. So if that's still the development plan for Jackson Jobe, then I would anticipate him pitching for Triple-A Toledo before he pitches for the Tigers, because from what I had heard, that was part of the development plan before he had the hamstring injury. So again, I'm not saying that like he's not going to be out there on Thursday when the Tigers need a starter. But again, like, I don't know, to do that on the road, like, one, you're not selling tickets that way either, by the way. So I don't know, maybe they run a second bullpen game and they start on Friday when the team is back home at Comerica Park. That could make some sense if you wanted to strategically do it, to put some more butts in the stands. I think that's something that, Scott Harris needs to try to do as much as he possibly can. So maybe that is an option. But again, like, I just don't see it happening. Like, it's fun to talk about. It's interesting. I'm not going to sit here and say like, there's no way it happens, because again, the stuff is good enough to get big league hitters out, and the Tigers don't have any starters. Like, you even look in the minor leagues, like Ty Madden has an 8.43 ERA in 12 games. Lyle Lockhart has a 5.67 ERA in 10 games. Brant Herter has a 5.49 ERA in 17 games. Brian Sammons has a 4.33 ERA in 16 games. Casey Mize is going to be out for a while, people. Like, I understand there's the thought that, it's a hamstring injury. He should be back soon. And, any other player probably would be, but this is a guy who's already going to need to have an innings restriction and an innings cap on his season this year. So this is a buffer time for him, and they're going to really make sure it's healthy. It's the lead leg. So the fact that it's that leg, you got to be really careful with that, because if it throws the arm out of whack or it causes issues with the back, then that's no good for Casey Mize long term. They're going to be really, really careful with him. He's not coming back anytime soon. Reese Olson, he has the shoulder strain. He's not coming back anytime soon. Matt Manning has a right lat strain. He might be out for the season. And Kenta Maeda obviously was removed from the rotation after posting a 7.26 ERA in 16 starts. And after 2 relief appearances, he has lowered his ERA to 7.07. I expect him to return to the rotation in some capacity at some point. But again, like, the Tigers are going to trade Jack Flaherty at the July 30th deadline. So if Ty Madden isn't ready, or Brant Herter isn't ready, or if they don't want to throw Brian Sammons or Lyle Lockhart, then I don't know, maybe at that point, once we get into August, Jackson Jobe is maybe more of an option for the Tigers. I don't see it happening now, but again, that's not to say that it shouldn't happen.
Kid, all I'll say to you is you've won 12 of 17 games. You have 13 games coming up against teams in your division. You're playing as well as you can play. If you're going to start Kenta Maeda on Thursday, you basically are telling your team, I'm not serious about winning. So you'd like to think the team has respect for the president of baseball operations. He has an opportunity to show his team that he respects what they're doing. There is nothing that I've seen in God knows how many thousands of baseball games and how sophisticated I am about pitching that I have watched Jackson Jobe do, who commands both sides of the plate, all 4 quadrants, and has 3+ pitches, one of the best changeups you will ever see, can pound right-hand hitters inside as a sequence. The fact that he's not pitching here Thursday, I will tell you, is an insult to every single Detroit Tiger and every single Detroit Tiger fan. So I know lots of people downtown don't like me this will probably add things to the list that they don't like me about if he's not pitching Thursday. All right, let's move on to happier things. One of the most fun Detroit Tiger baseball human beings in their history was inducted to the Hall of Fame today. What an honor. Former Tiger Jim Leyland inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame alongside Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and the spectacular Joe Mauer. Let's talk about it. He was 100% Jim Smokes Leyland, funnier than Don Rickles. Jeff Seidel was there, but talk to me what you've been told, what you heard, and what you thought about the speech.
Yeah, so first off, the Tigers did a great job. I mean, they were kind of they kind of spearheaded like a party that was thrown for Jim Leyland the night before. And, you know, the teams that he has been with along the way, they all chipped in and were a part of that process. But the Tigers, I thought, you know, again, from everything that I heard, you know, they kind of took leadership on making that happen. So hat tip to them for taking care of Jim Leyland. No surprise there, but that's always good to hear. And then as for the speech, yeah, like if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It was awesome. There were some funny moments. There were a lot of feel-good moments. There were some deep moments. There was, you know, again, I love when Jim Leyland had Gene Lamont stand up and, you know, gave Gene Lamont, you know, the love that he deserved. I thought that was really respectful of him to do. And yeah, like from the funny moments to the feel-good moments to like the tears to the Gene Lamont moment, like all that stuff was great. Obviously, Jeff Seidel from the Free Press, he was there in Cooperstown, New York to cover the ceremony. You can read more about it at freak.com. But if you haven't yet watched his speech, got to go on YouTube, look it up, find it, watch it. You might shed a tear or two.
Evan Petzold, I know that you've had more than a few opportunities to interact with Jim Leyland in Lakeland, probably, and a few times when he's hanging out downtown at Comerica. I don't know if you got any stories, but, you know, I'm sure you've had some fun conversations hanging out and been part of the Jim Leyland experience, have you not?
Yeah, there are a lot of Jim Leyland stories that I have to keep between the two of us. But man, oh man, he's the best, man. He's the best. And he's somebody that, look, like I'm 25 and, you know, when I started this job covering the Tigers, I mean, it was during the COVID season and, you know, I was just I was finishing college. Shoot, I was finishing college while covering the Tigers. And, you know, Jim Leyland treated me like I was a veteran reporter who had been around for years. Like he you know, invested his time in me, even though I was the new kid on the block who was like just coming around. And, you know, obviously our relationship has grown since then. But yeah, man, like so much respect for him, especially because of the way that he treated me. Like I never felt like I was like a young reporter. I felt like I was, you know, Tigers beat writer. Like that's how he made me feel. And that meant a lot to me as somebody who was, again, just finishing up college and was trying to figure out like how to cover baseball and how everything worked in this industry. And obviously it's been a few years now. So I kind of have like my feet under me a little bit more at this point. But like when I was, you know, starting out, especially those first, you know, 2-3 years, yeah, like it was a lot. And I just always felt like, I don't know, I always felt like I belonged when I was around Jim Leyland. And that was really cool. Like that's really special.
All I can say without telling too much of the story, or my child will be quite unhappy with me. My experience, first time I ever met him in person, we were at a baseball field in Novi. He was taking a break from managing. Son Patrick was playing 2 years ahead of himself in travel baseball against a team that my son was pitching for. He burned, I don't know, I mean, it was like while we were watching the game together, and you understand there was 11-year-olds playing, but I had to think he just about 5 heaters in a row. Okay, it was just smoke emitting everywhere, and a few choice comments for some things that were coming on the field, and it was about 45 minutes and 8 comments that I will never in my life forget. Pure Leyland and everything that you would think that Jim Leyland would be. And it was something I'll take to the grave. I can tell you that. Jim Leyland is a special, special human being. I think we all have quite a few Jim Leyland stories. None of them bad, almost all of them funny, and a great baseball guy. An honor to have him here for all the years that he was here, and an honor that's well-deserved. We're really, really, really happy for him. You read Jeff Seidel's article tomorrow in the Free, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of Jim Leyland pieces from yesterday, and I'm sure he'll be back in Detroit before the season's over and get interviewed quite a few times. And like I said, hat tip to him. All right, today, something we've been waiting on and we've discussed in the past few weeks happened. The Tigers promoted center fielder Max Clark and infielder Kevin McGonigle from Low-A Lakeland up to High-A West Michigan. Danny Hasty is very happy today. They went out with a bang. Both hit a homer. You can watch both of them. There's actually a clip of both homers together. A lot of fun. Tell me what you're thinking, what you're hearing, which one of those two guys you're more excited about. And maybe Evan Petzold, since days off for you are so rare, and when you do have them, you don't like to go on too many road trips. I was going to say we take a ride to Grand Rapids together one night and watch them if the opportunity presented itself, but I got a feeling we're not doing that. So tell me what you think about these two guys getting promoted.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if the Tigers fall out of the race, I might have to make a trip over to West Michigan, towards the end of the season, and we'll get to watch those guys. But yeah, Max Clark, Kevin McGonigle, both promoted from Low-A Lakeland to High-A West Michigan. Just to recap what those guys did at the Low-A level, Max Clark, he hit .286 with 7 home runs, 48 walks, and 58 strikeouts in 73 games. Kevin McGonigle, on the other hand, he hit .326 with 4 home runs, 35 walks, and 24 strikeouts in 60 games. In terms of guys that and also let's just make this very clear, both these guys have stolen some bags. Max Clark with 26 steals in 28 attempts. Kevin McGonigle with 20 stolen bases in 22 attempts. I think the speed with Max Clark is more real than Kevin McGonigle, but either way, two guys that have proven they're pretty smart on the base pass and can get the job done with the bat as well. But in terms of guys that I'm more excited about, if I had to compare the two, I would say right now I'm just more generally interested in Kevin McGonigle because of the hit tool that we've seen. That was something that was talked about with him coming out of the draft, that he was maybe the most advanced high school hitter, the guy with the best hit tool to come out of that draft class when the Tigers selected Kevin McGonigle. And obviously, went out and got Max Clark, and Max Clark was a number 3 overall pick in 2023, but then they went out and got Kevin McGonigle with their next pick. And yeah, I've been really impressed with Kevin McGonigle. The question is going to be is he a second baseman? Is he a shortstop? Does he play third base? I think long-term, he's more of a second baseman as opposed to a shortstop. I've talked about that a little bit as it pertains to the latest draft pick, picking up Bryce Rayner, who's more likely to stick a shortstop in the long term. But Kevin McGonigle, the way that he hits, I thought that he should have been promoted weeks ago. I wasn't sure if maybe they were waiting until Max Clark got a little bit more hot at the plate to try to promote those guys together. But Kevin McGonigle almost immediately showed that he was too advanced for the Low-A level, whereas Max Clark, it took him some time. And even then, Max Clark has had some ups and downs along the way this season. Kevin McGonigle has been pretty much red hot all season long, and it's been pretty awesome to watch. I mean, again, Max Clark, in June, he hit, I think, less than 250. He hit below 250. Max Clark did in June. So, yes, Max Clark's been red hot in July. That's been awesome to see. 3 homers, hitting .410 in 10 games. That earns you a promotion, no doubt, especially when you look at the whole body of work. But Kevin McGonigle has been really good for a really long time. I'm excited to see how the hit tool translates as he continues to face tougher pitching. He'll see some of it in West Michigan. But I'm actually really interested to see what Kevin McGonigle looks like when he gets to the Double-A level. And then as for Max Clark, it's going to be continuing to work on his swing, continue to put the ball in play, continue to limit strikeouts. And yeah, I think West Michigan could be a little bit of a challenge for him, just considering the fact that West Michigan, I mean, that can be a tough place to play at times, and we'll see how he responds.
Well, they're both going to see more velocity. I don't know how much more, but they will see more. Kevin McGonigle, bat-to-ball skills, elite. Both of them hitting the ball really, really hard, especially this month. McGonigle's homer was 107 plus. EV off the bat, Max Clark was 105 plus. Max Clark, has had a great year. I mean, really polishing. He's a lot more raw as a hitter than McGonigle is. But Max Clark is learning some skills. He's learned to hit the ball the other way. He's learned to turn on the ball a lot more. He's got man strength to probably generate, in the winter this year. I'm excited to see what he does next year. I think hoping that both of them can get to Erie in 2025. I think Kevin McGonigle's got a shot at playing in the big leagues in 2026. They had a lead of a hitter. I'm sure he's got some defense to work on, and just need to see better pitching, and they need to see caliber of play that's going to make them fail a little more. Neither one has failed a real lot since Kevin McGonigle hasn't failed a real lot at all this year. And Max started out a little rough, but he's been really good since the middle of April till now. So excited. I'll make sure that we get, I'm for sure going to go watch him play one night in West Michigan. And, these are two elite prospects. Clark's in the top 10 in all of baseball, and I think McGonigle will probably be in the top 25 by this winter. One of the most unique, polished hit tools in the minor leagues. And hats off to, Connor and Metzler and Scott Harris for drafting these guys. Hell of a draft. I mean, just from those two guys, whatever happens beyond them is bonus, but it's two big leaguers and two potentially really impactful big leaguers. So good things. So let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll wrap it up. All right, we're back. Riley Greene, Tarik Skubal went to the All-Star game. Tell us what you saw from those two appearances and what they've told you about how much they enjoyed their experience.
Yeah, so as for the game on Tuesday, Tarik Skubal made quick work of his opportunity there in the second inning. He needed just 10 pitches, throwing 7 strikes in a perfect second inning, retiring all 3 batters he faced. Christian Yelich grounded out to shortstop. Alec Boehm flew out to center field, and then Teoscar Hernandez flew out to right field. Tarik Skubal, didn't get swing and miss, didn't get strikeouts, but he worked extremely quickly, and he obviously enjoyed the experience. Riley Greene entered the game in the 5th inning, playing left field. He went 0 for 2, flying out to deep left center field in the 5th inning, and then striking out swinging in the 7th inning. He also made a sliding catch in left field to rob Jackson Merrill of what would have been a pretty important single, or maybe like a run-scoring extra base hit if Greene would have misplayed the ball. But he made the sliding catch in the 7th inning. That was really impressive. So yeah, both those guys obviously enjoyed the game. I thought it was interesting talking to both of them. They said that they didn't really feel a whole lot of adrenaline for the game, which is why when you look at like Skubal's velocity, like it was extremely down. Like the velocity in all of his pitches was down noticeably from season averages. His fastball sat like 95.5, which isn't normal for Tarik Skubal. And, he had said that Riley Greene felt the same way, like didn't really feel the adrenaline and kind of like the amped upness that you would feel when you go into a game. They didn't feel that in the All-Star game. I thought that was actually kind of interesting. But what they really enjoyed more than the game itself, was one, the red carpet for their family. So Tarik Skubal was out there with his wife and then his newborn son. They were out there together as a family. And then Riley Greene had his parents with him on the red carpet. And so that was a special moment for them as families, right? But then beyond that, when it comes to the baseball stuff, it was everything that happened inside the clubhouse. So Tarik Skubal and Riley Greene both talked about there being like a group of all-stars who were hanging out in the AL clubhouse, and they got really close. They were talking, everything like matchups and how to face certain guys and, what they like about different guys' games. And then also too, just like general conversations about, life as a big leaguer. And like, because again, they're all doing the same things, right? All these guys are big leaguers. They're doing the same job. So it's like chatting about their profession, chatting about their life off the field, and then chatting about, hey, like, how do you strike this guy out? How do you strike this guy out? Or how do you throw this pitch or that pitch? And what are you thinking in the box when you're facing this pitcher, right? So it's those kind of hypothetical conversations, but then also too, just like, again, these are all dudes who are doing the same exact job and they're getting to know each other and, they're forming close bonds. So it seems like that happened behind the scenes quite a bit. And the red carpet was really great for the families. And then, that was kind of like, 1A, 1B for those guys. And then the game kind of came after that, believe it or not. It was interesting. But it was cool hearing from them, and they obviously really enjoyed it, and they were very honored to represent the Tigers at the All-Star game.
Glad to hear it. Won't be the last appearance for either of them. Hopefully, it's the first of many for both. Always something to learn, something to enjoy, something to make memories with. All right, I want to be quick on this because it's tiring for both of us to keep discussing it, but Javier Baez, 3 for his last 23, 4 for his last 51, 3 for 23 since he came back from the injured list, been on it a couple times for his back. How long can this go on, dude?
$25 million in 2024, $25 million in 2025, $24 million in 2026, and $24 million in 2027. That's what Javier Baez is owed. And last I checked, do you really want to see Ryan Kreidler or Zach McKinstry? And also, by the way, everybody, Eddie Leonard has extreme, chase issues, and he's also like not a shortstop. So unless you want to go back to the Ryan Kreidler, Zach McKinstry tandem that we saw while Javier Baez was on the injured list, which I don't think anybody wants to revisit that, it's going to go on for a little bit longer. And unless the Tigers are going to go out there and try to find a shortstop, which I don't see that happening, we might be seeing this into next year too. Like if Javi Baez can just play elite defense, they're going to have to live with whatever he's got offensively because look, like they don't have any better options right now. So, again, trying to come up with the answer to that question. I know what you want me to say. You want me to say, cut him now, get it over with. That's what you want me to say, Mark. I get that. And that's what fans want to hear. But the reality of the situation is that's not what's going to happen. We saw what happened with Ryan Kreidler and Zach McKinstry. Again, nobody wants that. People were begging for Javier Baez to come back. And now, you know what? He's a handful of games in and you're already ready to cut him again, Mark. Like, I get it. You're frustrated. I get it. The fans are frustrated. But yeah, like there's really no better option right now. Let's just be honest.
Well, all I'll say to you is I have not been on the let's cut Javi Baez train right now. I think it's going to be real difficult to bring him back in 2025. I can say that. Unless, I can't even fathom the idea of what that would look like. But hey, you may want to see if you can exhume the corpse of Nick Ahmed, who I know got cut. He's a shell of himself, but right now, Javi Baez is on track to have the lowest OPS season in the history of the major leagues. So I don't know how low you can get, but that's pretty low. All right, before we get out of here, the Tigers play their next 13 games against the AL Central. Should be real interesting, pretty big test. You got 3 teams that are playing for something. If you want to include the 12-5 in their last 17 Detroit Tigers, you got 4. So you got 4 games against Cleveland this week, followed by 3 games against Minnesota, followed by 2 games against Cleveland, and 4 games against Kansas City. The trade deadline is July 30th. I promise you, Jack Flaherty is getting dealt, barring an injury. What do you think about these next 2 weeks with 13 games against the AL Central?
Give me a percentage. What do you think the chances are the Tigers sweep the Cleveland Guardians in their 4 games coming up?
0.
That's all I got to say.
What do you think their record will be in the next 13 games against their division rivals?
I mean, to put a record on that, I have no idea. But look, I think this is a really important stretch for the Tigers where if they really want to be able to make a move and do something, like they're going to have to win these games. Let's not forget they're 11 games back in the AL Central right now. And that's why I made the point, like, you have to sweep the Guardians. You have to go and you have to take 2 of 3 against the Twins. You have to win one of the 2 games against the Guardians that you get at the end of July. And then you got Kansas City. Kansas City has those guys are playing well. Like, those guys are playing good ball. So again, I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to go, but I think you got to win all 4 games against Cleveland if you really want to say that you're for real. There's a lot of season left, Mark, I know, but you got to make statements. You got to make statements when you're 11 games back. And so that's why I asked you that question. I think it matters.
I don't look at it quite like that. I just look at the Tigers need to play well. They need to keep playing well. They need to figure out how to go 8-5, 9-4 in these next 13 games. As far as catching Cleveland, forget about that. It's not happening. I mean, can they get back in the wild card race? Yeah, that'd be nice. But at the end of the day, they need to keep playing winning baseball. Winning baseball breeds baseball. And it's been so long since they've done it for a long time. Besides the month of September in 2023, I'd just like to see how long they can sustain playing winning baseball. You're not going to play winning baseball for very long, starting a bullpen game every 5 days and Kenta Maeda every 5 days. It's just not physically possible. Now you're going to subtract one of the best starters in the American League in Jack Flaherty. You need another starter that can win you baseball games. So I think I made it perfectly clear what I think they need to do. Will they be courageous enough to do it? All right, time to get out of here, Evan Petzold. You need to go to bed. I got plenty of stuff to do myself tomorrow. I'd like to remind everybody to please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. You can always find Days of Roar embedded at thefreak.com in every Evan Petzold article. Please, there's so many great subscription deals that Freak's doing on digital stuff now. It's almost for free. I'd like to thank Free Press editor Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the man, Robin Chan, Magic Chan, for always making us sound great. Love to my grandson, the spectacular Braden Michael Gorash. Shout out to Savannah Petzold. Apologies for keeping Evan Petzold from giving you a nice greeting this evening. Until next week, all I can say to everybody on a day of American history, peace.